It was just an illusion. You know, I was chasing an illusion. It never existed, but it was in my head. You know, it was in my head. I was getting revenge for who? No one got you in jail with you. Who am I getting revenge on? It's just my head was fucked. You know.
What happened to your life when you started studying spirituality more?
I don't know. Spirituality is pretty tricky, you know. It's pretty much just letting it wing. It's just imagine if it was like this. And then you realize I can make it like this.
Yeah.
You know, spirituality, I don't know. It wipes everything. This is what spirituality is. It wipes everything that I ever believed and makes it a lie. You know?
What did you used to believe that makes it a lie now?
I believe just what everybody else, Adam and Eve, motherfucker. Yeah. I believe that, yeah, that's what I believe, you know. I believed all that crap.
Wow.
And everything then, so that's the paradigm shift. When everything you've been taught your whole life, and then it comes the time you realize was a lie. Now, how do we start from there? You know, we live in a lie.
Yeah.
We have to make up our own lie and live in this lie. You know, it's going to take it till you find, if you checked and try to figure out to the day you die, you would never figure it out. It's based thousands and thousands and how many millions of lives and years of lives. And some people just dedicated their whole life to trying to figure out the lies and what this world about, and they found out nothing.
Right.
They have this big encyclopedia mind about wonderful things in history of the world and stuff, but we don't have the answer still. You know, it's just a beautiful ride.
Just enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
Don't try to figure everything out.
No way. It's a beautiful ride. We don't do that. As human beings, we don't do that. We don't enjoy the ride. This shit is not right. We got to figure this out. This is not right. This is not. That's how we are.
Do you think if you had
spoil something?
Yeah, I know. Do you think if you had more peace in your heart, more love in your heart, in your 20s, 30s, do you think you would have enjoyed the ride more? And do you think you would have been able to be as successful in the boxing world if you had peace and love in your heart?
I didn't know. All my life I read about the conqueror, Alexander the Great, Genghis Khan, Charlemagne, all these crazy guys, Clovis, and all these. I read about these guys. You know what I mean? They declared themselves God. You know, you think our great prophets, you think of Jesus, of Prophet Muhammad, that's his part was.
Hello, folks. My name is Loa Mon, and for the regular subscribers to this platform, this channel, I know that we are all aware that the Akan has vanished. So, you are hearing a different voice, and you're hearing it for good cause and good reason. And I'll explain as I move along forward. But, upon the Akan's vanishing, I was able to have a conversation with him. And it was regarding the family, of course, and the nature and state of everything. And that conversation was, it was very philosophic in nature. And so the Akan was, shall I say, intrigued by that and by the essence of it. And so upon his vanishing, he asked that I share it with you. So the following are a few words of wisdom that I and the Akan had a chance to discuss over that philosophic exchange. And he did ask me to deliver it to you upon his vanishing, as he believed, this would be a good time to, offer you all a good perspective as to the state of affairs of the family, and the situation that the family is in, and, it was during this exchange, as we all know, the Akan was always in, somewhat of in disbelief as to why it was that the family just could not understand the situation we're in, and and worse yet, even realize what was happening here on earth, even though he was telling us, right? And yeah, and but most important, not having that drive, once he shared the truth and the knowledge with us, right, of what was going on and this demagoguery here on earth and the lies and the deception, basically, it was a bit frustrating to him that the family would not come together and organize and gradually try to, fight this thing off. And so, he was also kind of sad that, that the family just didn't have their own, drive and determination, vigorously like he did, right? And so, yeah. We just didn't have that drive to, eradicate and dispel the, the insolence here on earth. So, and then as, we discussed further, he was also, a bit taken aback of the fact that, a lot of the folks in the family thought that it was the so-called messenger's job to eradicate this foolishness, these lies and deceptions here on earth, that, man is experiencing. And so, that was a bit frustrating. And so, before he left us, in one of the last lessons, he shared the story of, or at least he mentioned the movie. He made reference to it, The Last of the Mohicans. And it was about the remaining descendants of that Mohican clan that they fought vigorously, till death to try to survive and to eradicate what was going. What was happening to him. And so, if you haven't had an opportunity to look at that movie, go view it. He didn't make it as a reference for no reason at all. Everything that the Akan did had a reason, folks. It was calculated. It was calculated. Precisely, You look back and you look at the lessons, the audios, the videos, the music, every bit of that information was filled deep with knowledge and truth for us to take forward and teach others. And so, with him being gone and being, as he says, vanished, he's no longer with us. And so, we're going to have to pick up that baton and move along and pass it, envision those track runners, right? And just hand it off. It's the truth, however you comprehend it, just work your environment that you're in and begin to share the information. Because we know you learned something. We know you got something out of it. So, to make a long story short, The Akan was, he did remain in great disbelief. And the things that I just shared with you, he found it greatly discouraging. And so, when we had this conversation, I was able to offer the following. And we discussed more. But again, folks, he asked that I explain my part and to publish it on this channel. And so here is what I offered as a sort of philosophic explaining. It was an analogy, and it was an analogy of our family. But most important, folks, it was an analogy of the state of our family. Okay, folks, so as I begin to explain to you and discuss this analogy that the Akan and I spoke about, I can remind you again of the movie that the Akan referenced, The Last of the Mohicans, because, one reason that he, there were many reasons, but one main reason he mentioned that movie to you is because, as a bit of a reference, because, he felt that, upon you hearing your truth of what was going on and what was taking place here on earth concerning man and the family of man, you all would be inspired to, have that same, fighting spirit, that same reaction, to want to eradicate what was going on and to stop, what was happening to you. And so, and set a certain order in place. But, that never transpired. And so it was, realizations like that, spawned this conversation that we had, and, he was asking why is it? Why the lack of responsiveness? Why, does the family think that, he is the sole person that is responsible, that has to do all these things? So here is where the analogy comes into play. I said, well, I got to thinking about that too. And I said, well, maybe the best way, we can explain it is this. I remember once that the Akan gave an analogy of a man, living in a home. And I'm sure those of us that are subscribers, we can recall that certain analogy about the man in the house and the place being taken over, and he couldn't recognize the house or what was going on, and the vehicles outside, all sorts of things like that. The Akan made reference to, and but I looked at it from a different perspective, because as I thought about it, if someone is in a certain predicament, right? Things are not going well. People are mistreating you, and they're doing, bad things, and bad things are happening, and you've basically been, your authority has been basically usurped, and you're kind of defenseless, and you're on the defensive, and you've been taken out on every corner, so to speak. So once you have been given a certain truth and certain knowledge and tools to begin to better your circumstances and correct certain matters, why would you be paralyzed and rendered immobile to do it? What's going on? What are you thinking? What's happening? What's that thought process that would cause you not to do it. And then want the very person that is giving you your history and certain information and truth about your situation, want them to then go and rescue you out of your situation, you know? And so herein lies the analogy. And, Dear Khan, called it the baby analogy because I made reference to a baby. And basically, here's the analogy. There was a family, a group of folks, living in this beautiful home. And one day some robbers came in and they murdered the adults, decimated everything, left the house in shambles, for all intents purposes. But there was one lone survivor. It was a baby. And this baby was allowed to grow up in his own household with the robbers. The robbers they stayed in the house with the baby. Okay. And the baby grew up alongside the robbers and the deceivers. And they had somewhat of a deceptive atmosphere within that house. They didn't necessarily come out and say that they weren't related to this child or say that they actually cared for the child, but they left certain things to be assumed. And so the baby grew up, because the deceivers, only gave the baby the bare minimum, in terms of survival, right? And as a child, he only had access to bare minimum necessities, and didn't even enjoy the own privileges of his own home, right? But he grew up there and he thought that these people were somewhat benevolent to him, all right? So as this baby grew into a child, the child grew into an adult, still living in the home, and also very clueless that the house, this beautiful home, belonged to him because it belonged to his parents. But these robbers, these crooks, these thieves, these deceivers, were living there. And in fact, they moved their own parents and relatives into the house. That's how bold and brazen they were. So one day, the adult that's living there, the survivor, he's clueless, right? He's totally oblivious. So one day he crosses the path of a gentleman, and the gentleman recognizes him and he says, "Oh, you're the child of," let's just say, the Amans. All right. And of course, this person is clueless. So this gentleman begins to talk with him and share the secrets of his past and who he was and who his parents were and how, his household came about, that very house that he's living in. And in fact, who the robbers were, that they were in fact robbers. Let's make it plain. They were murderers. They murdered this man's parents, his very parents. And so the young adult was in somewhat of, we're going to say, shock. He couldn't believe it. Right? And he was rendered literally, I'm going to use the word comatose. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know what to think about the situation, but he didn't believe the situation initially. And it took a while for that information to really sink in. And so eventually he came around to the notion of, once he began to observe, because innate, he knew even from a child that something was just off with these people that he was living with. Something was just off. He couldn't put his hands on it. He knew something was wrong, but he didn't know what. And after being given his history of who he was from this gentleman, he began to, tie the loose string, so to speak. He began to put two and two together and say, and then things began to click. And so now, when he sees this stranger, one day he proceeded to ask him, I can help you. I can help you get the message across. I can help you eradicate the people out of my house. Let me help you. Let me help you. And so the stranger, stepped back and said, why does this man think that I need to help him remove the people out of his house? Or better yet, he's helping me to remove the people out of his house that have usurped authority and just basically taken over his property, right? And he said, why is he thinking that? And he said, I'm just the messenger. I just gave you the information of who you are and gave you the essential tools of how you can go about removing those invaders out of your home. Right? And he says, but no, I can help you. I can provide financial support. I can help you do this. And so again, now that's how the analogy went. And the Khan began to ask me certain questions. Well, why would he think that? Why would this person in this analogy think that the messenger is supposed to free them of their bondage, so to speak, right? And I said, well, maybe the information is so overwhelming to the person that perhaps they feel helpless. They don't know what to do. And because they don't have as much knowledge and information, the full knowledge and information of what's going on, perhaps they feel as though they're incapable of eradicating what's going on. And because the stranger knows most about the situation, that perhaps they can then provide the messenger, this messenger, with the finances and the assistance to help, orchestrate and spread that message broader, so that for those that do have the urge and desire to assist this Amon descendant in gaining his property back and gaining his authority back, maybe that would be the case. And so there were, several questions that the Khan began to ask, like, okay, well, like, seems like this person that's an abusive environment, growing up as a child and being able to endure certain things that this person endured in this household with these strangers, right? And if you're being abused, why don't you stop it? Why don't you try to eradicate it? And my thoughts were, perhaps this person did not comprehend it. Although it was abuse, maybe they themselves didn't comprehend it as abuse, because it was a natural state of being to them, And so, the analogy went on, but that's the gist of it, folks. So in this analogy, that child, that baby, is the family. Your present state of perhaps not being able to move and to organize and do something, because maybe there's a feeling of being overwhelmed and thinking that perhaps, with the knowledge and information that you do have, you can't move forward. because perhaps there's this feeling of you needing to know more. But the solution is very simple, folks. You start in your immediate environment. And that was the gist of, the analogy is that, it is, when you look at it at a total, in its totality, it can be overwhelming. That's a lot of information. It's a lot going on this planet that you really don't know. It's so much the Akan wanted to get in our hands and to teach us and tell us. But, it just didn't work that way at the time. But, he still had that desire, and that fire that burned deep to, get that message out. And so that, folks, will never go away. If you truly are an Aman, you will have that spirit, that energy about you to want to eradicate and to do and to spread that message. And so, with that being said, that's the basis of that analogy. And so we really just have to, you're going to have to start thinking about, the information that you do know and what you have learned and have full comprehension of. And folks, you have to start in your immediate environment. Remember that runner with that baton and passing that information on, and begin to teach your family, to teach your children, to teach those closest to you that are seeking knowledge and information. And of course, the information that the Akan had to share, it's not for the everyday person, it's of the highest knowledge. And so, we have to keep that in mind too, right? As I am going to suggest to you all at this very moment, when you start sharing what you do know and what you have learned from the Akan on your social media pages and your websites and, your private conversations that you're having with people, day to day, that you do keep in mind that this knowledge is of the highest degree. And, although you have this great desire to share, you're going to be very mindful of those that you share it with. Because you certainly, as the Akan always said, you don't want to teach the enemy. Now, he didn't say those exact words, but that's the gist, when you of the matter, when you start sharing certain highly advanced knowledge and science and information, certain truths, and it falls upon the enemy's ears. Okay, so let's be mindful of that in the process. And so, folks, that's basically what it was. And as I said before, there were other conversations concerning the analogy. I cannot close without at least bringing to your attention, other aspects of this and this baby analogy. I had mentioned, this word comatose, right? Well, when you think of the word coma, you know what's going on with that terminology. That person who is in that state of being can, you're basically dead for all intents and purposes, right? So, and it's very hard for you to awaken out of that state. And we know that when we talk about someone being in a coma, they can be in a coma as a result of some great trauma that they incurred, or they can be in a coma because it was induced upon them, right? Certain, by the powers that be, to in one example, to help in the healing process, right? And then there's that other side you have to think about of that's more diabolic and wicked on such of a wicked level that you would keep someone in a comatose state for their own detriment, so that they never wake up. Because, if someone doesn't, get resuscitated or revive out of that comatose state, they are what we would consider as physically dead. And so, as we talk about this analogy and we bring this to a close, when we talk about the family, the family is this individual, this baby. And on a collective note, the family is dead. And they need to be awakened. You need to wake up, folks. And that is what the Akan was doing, waking the folks up. And so, but when we think about it, as we begin to discuss that analogy, the Akan kind of agreed with the analogy. And, because he had already had certain feelings about the family anyway, and, certain levels of disbelief as to why the family couldn't mobilize or gather together and try to gradually eradicate what was going on and what was happening to them collectively. So that I think is part of what caused the Akan to disappear from the family. And so in the end, folks, he did agree with that explanation because it fell in line with his own experiences and his own thoughts and ideas. And so much so that he proposed that this that baby analogy could be turned into a short film anime. And so I am sort of forecasting that project ahead. And any of you that can contribute in that aspect, do reach out to Ilo Aman, And yeah, so, and for those of you, that are wondering what does the moniker Lo Aman stands for, it stands for the love of Aman. That's right, folks, love of Aman. And it is through this deep-seated love of man, the Aman, that I am pursuing the work of the Akan. And so I've opened a channel, and you can find the link in the description, where I'll be sharing with the dedicated family an extensive amount of the teachings that the Akan had left with me. And on a more personal note, I'll say that the Akan is right in the last words spoken before his departing. He used that analogy, and it's more than just an analogy, folks. When he talked about the lion and man and who we are, cosmically, and what those that before us in the family of Aman left for us, right? Certain knowledge and information to let us know that yes, we are lions and and I'm going to say lionesses. That's not the right term, I know, but as far as being in the family of Aman, there is both male, there's man, and there is woman. So man, you are lions. that analogy. And then also for the woman, you are the lioness. And so I see myself as a lioness. And I know that the Akan is a powerful lion. Okay? I am very happy that our paths crossed, you know, and family, I know you are too. I know you are too, because the Akan had shared some very high levels of knowledge with you all, and even higher levels of knowledge with me. And so when he talked about that analogy in terms of the lion and the lioness, I want to ask you that same question. Man within the family of Aman, are you a lion? And woman, are you a lioness? Are you man? That's a good question too, to ask first. Because if you are, then I'm going to ask you to join me at the new channel, and you can tell others. I'll have my own insights and discussions from time to time, but I'll also be providing on a scheduled format and manner the instructions and teachings that the Akan left, because there were certain messages that he definitely wanted the family to know. And so as the Akan shared the higher levels of knowledge with me, I am therefore what he calls a MOK, a master of knowledge. And when you have such things and you have been given such information and certain things have been shared with you, you simply cannot stay quiet. And so, folks, I can't stay quiet. And I tell you, family, these are extremely advanced matters, never to be known now by the undeserving person. So I will always keep that in mind as I share certain information. And so there it is, folks. Here it is. I want to thank you for listening. Because it was very important to the Akan, that the analogy be shared with you, and that certain information get delivered to you. And it was nice to have you with me here today and to listen. And so go ahead and head over to my channel in the description.